So what I'm going back to, I think some of you have heard this, but you've heard it a year or two ago. So I'll ask for your, we can always relearn, and if you may have more insights. And those of you who have joined the class this year have definitely not heard it. And I've decided to choose a sugya that that essentially talks about communal responsibility. And appropriately, it's something that I think from the beginning of the end of the week, I've changed my views radically. Meaning at the beginning of the week, you all saw the pictures of the Tel Avivnikim on the beach and everyone, gathering and partying and having a good time. At the beginning of the week, we were saying goodbye to our midrasha. And we also were trying to keep to the rules, but not so much, saying goodbye to everyone, hugging everyone, going to the park. Girls were crying. It was very, very emotional saying goodbye to TVA. And by yesterday, there were no more hugging. We were keeping, distance. There's definitely a sense of, people becoming isolated and shutting down in order to protect the community. We finally decided only last night, the Rav really held out to shut the shuls. The shuls have been open until now with with a minyan with only 10, but you see it's very hard for people, meaning when more than 10 men come to join a minyan and are told, no, you have to either wait for another 10 or go home. They don't want to do it. The Gabayim having a terrible time in trying to get people to abide by the rules. I don't know if you saw the really upsetting video on Beit Shemesh of the Hasidic wedding with horror. I mean, again, all this stuff gets on social media, hundreds of people dancing. This was 2 nights ago. And so I think it's very hard, especially when we feel, well, it's an invisible enemy, to feel that, well, what am I doing that's wrong? We just go out, we just go see this. It's very, very difficult. But what I'd like to talk about through the Gemara is where's communal responsibility and social justice when there's no legal structure, meaning at this point, the police are not going around and arresting individuals who are breaking the laws. They are finally shutting down Haredi yeshivas. They're trying, I'm sure there are other communities. I don't want to just critique the Haredim. But I do think the Haredim are an important prototype because everything is so communal there, right? Everything is about davening together and rejoicing together and so on. So that for them, I think it is going to be harder in many ways to put a stop to what is the essential foundation of their community. And yet that is what's required. And the only way to really do that is for us to support one another, right? To support, to even call out, no, you know what, we can't do that, or that's bad behavior. That's sometimes the only way change happens. And right now we're in a period of unbelievable change. I am 50 years old and there's nothing to call upon here. And I don't think maybe my grandmother, who would have been 111 right now, she might have been able to think back over 100 years to things that went on in the 1920s and 30s. But I think for us, this is all very new and causing a lot of uncertainty. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Now it's 9:02. I'm going to start the class. Let me see if I can have a gallery view. I don't know if I can while I'm teaching. Okay, I'm going to put this down here. Okay, so what we're going to look at is the Takanot from Usha, really one of my favorite Gemaras. I don't know how to get this. Okay. If you have a question, please, I assume you can unmute yourselves. I would suggest muting yourself because, can you all see the screen? You can see my screen, right? Social justice, time of Usha.
What Masechet?
Oh, good question, Marcia. Masechet Ketubot, and it's daf. Yeah. I should put the daf. I think it's Mem Tet. Hold on one second. I'm going to tell you in 1 minute. I think it's 49.
Yeah.
I think it's 49, the mission.
I'm learning this.
You're learning this in Chavruta with your husband?
No, with Pearl Borough. We're already on 77.
Okay, good. So those who have learned it or are learning it, please, please, I'll pause every so often to say, does someone have an insight or something they've learned? That would be great. Okay. Now this Mishnah starts out so interesting. We're in the middle of Ketubot, we're in the middle of a chapter on relationships between fathers and daughters. And so fathers have a lot of, and we've talked about this many times, have a lot of agency over their daughters until they're 12 and a half. A father can sell his daughter to be an amat ivriya. A father can marry his daughter off without her permission. We hope that fathers have the best interest of their daughters in mind, but obviously we can't control that through the legal structure. Now, hopefully it's beginning to be clear why I chose this. We have a situation where fathers have more control than the state, right? They are the independent legal entity in their own home. They have all this control over their daughters. A father does not have to sustain his daughter. Well, what does that mean? Meaning, even for the Gemara, that's going to be a shocking statement. What does it mean a father doesn't have to support his daughter? He can allow her to starve? Well, we don't allow children to starve in our community. So where are we going to get the resources to either enforce the fathers supporting their daughters, or as a community, we're going to have to support the daughters? Okay. So that's the opening statement. So now Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah comes in and has a drasha. Normally a drasha is based on a pasuk, on a verse. We don't know what the pasuk is because there is no pasuk that he quotes. It's not a pasuk. I'm already going to tell you that. It's from a different part of Ketubot, a Tanaitic decree, which maybe we'll refer to, but only in the course of studying. We're not going to see it. Habanim yershu v'habanot yizonu. Ma habanim einan yorshin ela la'achar mitat ha'av. Av habanot ein nizonot ela la'achar mitat avihem. So what Rabbi Elazar reminds his colleagues in Keren B'Yavne about is, wait a minute. I know when daughters are supported. When sons inherit, it's only after their fathers die. So too daughters. Daughters are only legally supported by their fathers after their fathers die. Now, I know last year we learned Kiddushin, but we did segue a bit into Ketubot. That's a very interesting statement that I'm going to pause and reflect on. Sons inherit after their father dies, deoraita, right? That's a biblical law. The oldest son inherits twice. The other sons then share the remainder of the inheritance. If there are sons, daughters do not inherit. That's the Torah law. Already we're on this chapter 4 in Ketubot. Enactments are made so that daughters are supported by the estate after their fathers die if they are not married. Now again, this should astonish you, because essentially what's happened is we've overwritten a Torah law. What the rabbis have done, the Torah says only sons inherit. That is who's entitled to the father's estate. And yet, in several places, it's reinforced that daughters will be supported from the estate. They won't inherit. We're not going to call it inheritance. But they will be sustained from the estate after their father dies, even though it cuts in to their brother's rightfully Torah-mandated inheritance. That astonishes me every single time, because I don't want to say it's so easy, but it's so obvious to them that this is a place where there are going to be moral and social implications if we do not somehow reformulate or reinterpret the biblical law so that we as rabbis allow that inheritance to be pushed a bit to the side in order to protect vulnerable members of our society, the daughters. Now, what goes on in this chapter, and I don't know, I think we're going to do this week and next week. This is going to sound a bit callous perhaps, but for the Gemara, a dead father is easier to deal with, because we assume a father wants what's best for his daughters. That is the normal way of things. Fathers want to take care of their daughters. They want to nurture their daughters. They want to marry off their daughters to good men. They want to give them gifts and dowry. But if he's alive and he's saying, nope, not interested. Nope, not supporting my daughter. Nope, not giving her a dowry. There's nothing I can do with that father. Legally, the court has no recourse, has no ability to force a recalcitrant father to support his daughter. But once he dies, we go into his head and we say, of course he would have wanted to support his daughter. And we're going to take from the son's inheritance in order to do so. So I'm just showing you a very interesting structure that a father is not obligated to provide for his daughters in sustenance. We're going to ask a question. Some of you may, well, what about the son? Is he obligated to support his sons but not his daughters? We're going to ask that question in a moment. But for now, I'm just pointing out that what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says is taken as undisputed fact because of various decrees they have made in the women's ketubah and in other places at the end of ketubot, that we will not allow unmarried single daughters who are orphaned to beg, and as a result, they are going to be maintained from their father's estate. What will happen if I have a father who refuses to support his daughters while he's alive? Well, then I have we can oversee that, because we can see, oh, a father's not supporting his daughter, we'll take money from the charity and we'll support the daughter, right? But once he's dead and there's an estate, I don't want to tax communal resources unless I have to. If I have a father who is not behaving, then I may have to use the communal charity fund. Now, that's not a small thing to do. If I have a father who can afford to support his daughter and refuses to, I, as a community, that's all of us, we're not going to allow the daughter to go begging and prostitute herself. We're not going to allow that to happen. But we're going to have to use our own money. And that money might be better spent supporting a very poor family or a very sick family that doesn't have resources. What do we do with my middle to upper class father who decides, you know what, I pay taxes, let the state take care of her. I don't feel like it, right? What am I going to do there? That's again where I have, I'm between a rock and a hard place. Legally, I can't do anything with him. As a community, I'm not going to allow her to prostitute herself. There are communities, not in Judaism, in Greco-Roman culture, orphan daughters with no resources were thrown onto the streets. No one protected them. I'm not going to do that. But then I'm going to be in a situation where I have to make decisions about communal resources. And why should I spend money on a girl whose father could support her but refuses to? That's the picture we're going to be talking about. Okay, wait, let me just open. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open it up if anyone wants to say something. Okay, yes, Marcia, did you want to say something?
I was going to say that I think comes a little bit later, a few sentences or paragraphs later, where even when she's getting married, sometimes the groom has to provide her with her gown because the father may be stingy, doesn't want to give her clothing.
Right. And what I'm going to say, which is interesting, and I don't, maybe we'll continue with it after Pesach. It's in like another daf or two. You're right, Marcia. That again, the father who dies suddenly becomes a generous benefactor with regard to the dowry. Oh, a father would have wanted to give his daughter generously. Let's go into his estate and take out an amount, sell an apple orchard, and give her the money so that she's generously provided for. That's what fathers do. But as Marcia says, if he's alive and he's saying, nah, not going to do it, not interested, there's nothing I can do to him. So that's what we're going to talk about. I will just say, in order to make it clear that not all fathers are obviously stingy and closed fist. In the Gaonic period, it got to a point where fathers were giving so generously to their daughters that it really was, the court had to protect the estate, right? They were like, wait, stop giving so generously because the sons need to inherit something when the father was alive, right? The Gaonim are aware of fathers who give very generous to the point that the sons are getting, their future inheritance is becoming compromised. So there were fathers who obviously were very concerned for their sons and did provide very generously for their daughters, and provided generously. But what the questions the Gemara is asking is, what happens if they don't? Can we do anything, right? And what I want to get to, and this is my teaser, right, is rabbinic court rulings in the 1950s and the 1980s that are going to use a piece of the Gemara we're going to learn in order to readdress fathers and then parents supporting children. I want to say it's a 2,000-year leap. They're going to do something astonishing. And they're going to do it because the world changes in terms of protecting children. In other words, until the 20th century, children really were not protected. Children could be abused. And unfortunately today in certain parts of the world, parents can still sell their children into a form of slavery or sell them to a man for marriage. Daughters can be sold. In the Western world, we have laws that protect children. And that's a significant change. What we're dealing with 2,000 years ago is the rabbis acutely aware of the vulnerability of children if they have parents, particularly fathers, who refuse to support them. So again, the difference between us and the Greco-Roman and the Romans is that we as a community, as a Jewish community, a halachic community, will v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, lo ta'amod al dam reacha, you have to give tzedakah, meaning we have other laws in our system that are essentially going to protect those daughters, and we'll see sons. But we really would prefer it come from the father. The question is, can we force the father? That's our question legally. Okay, I'm going to go back. Does anyone else have anything they want to say quickly before I go back to the Gemara? Okay, so the first piece of Gemara I'm bringing, here we go, hold on. The first piece of Gemara that I'm bringing, oh, I can actually annotate, hold on. I need to get, show thumbnail video, no, it's not. Okay, is really a little bit before the decrees in Usha. Okay, let's take a look at it. The Gemara is now going to ask a question. B'mizono bito hu de'eno chayim. Hold on, I can actually, I think, annotate. Let's see if I can get my annotating tool back. I'm still learning to use Zoom, so next week I think I'll be.
We all are.
I'm gonna be able to like circle and do whatever I do. But this is new. Okay. B'mizono bito hu de'eno chayav. Ha b'mizono b'no chayav. So one possibility is that he doesn't have to support his daughters, but he would have to support his sons. Bito hu de'eno chayav. Ha b'mizono b'no chayav. Bito nami chovahu deleka ha mitzvah ika. They come up with two possible ways of reading the Mishnah. He did have to support his daughters, but he would have to support his sons. Okay, remember, the Mishnah only talks about daughters. So one extrapolation is maybe he has to support his sons, but he doesn't have to support his daughters. Furthermore, he might not have to support his daughters, but that doesn't mean there isn't a mitzvah. Now, this really surprised my students I taught it on Tuesday to a group of college students. And the ones who grew up in a religious environment basically said, wait a minute, a mitzvah, isn't that a chovah? So I said, that's interesting that you say that. We tend to put the two together. Mitzvah and chovah go together. Mitzvah and obligation. A mitzvah is an obligation. But let me ask you, how many of you say to your grandchildren or your children, sweetheart, go get me a cup of water, do a mitzvah. Just do a mitzvah. Go do a mitzvah. Go take the recycling out to the garbage. It's a mitzvah, right? We often use mitzvah as a good deed. Go do a good deed. Now, does that mean all those good deeds are also obligations? It's not clear. Meaning we tend to use do a mitzvah, just do another mitzvah, to be kind to one another, do good deeds for one another. Now, it's true, we do have mitzvahs, visit the sick and honor thy father and mother and so on and so forth. But I would strongly suggest that many of the times we say do a mitzvah, it's our way of trying to guilt our children into, or encourage or inspire them to do something by reminding them that, you want to collect mitzvahs in your basket, right? On Rosh Hashanah, we take out the mitzvahs and we take out the averas. But is that the same as a chovah. Is that the same as something that's legally obligated, religiously legally obligated, or legally obligated, depending on how we look at legal obligation? And what this Gemara does is pull apart chovah and mitzvah, meaning maybe he's not legally obligated, but it's certainly a mitzvah. Okay, so that's the language of the Gemara. Okay, let's go back and see. But as I said, it surprised my students because we tend to think there's an intertwining of mitzvah and chovah, and this Gemara strongly suggests that those are two different categories. Sometimes mitzvahs are chovah, but sometimes they're actually optional, or they're morally the right thing to do, but they're not legally mandated. Really interesting. Okay, I'm going to leave that. Mani matnitin. So now the Gemara asks what the Gemara often likes to ask. Who's the author of this statement, a father does not have to support his daughters? Because maybe if we figure out who the author is, we can understand a little bit what his approach is, what he's trying to say. Maybe we can answer the two questions we have raised. What about sons? And is there nonetheless a mitzvah? Lo Rabbi Meir, lo Rabbi Yehuda, but lo Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. I'm already going to tell you the language. I happen to love this sugya structurally. It has a very neat structure. And we start off by saying, well, it can't be Rabbi Meir, it can't be Rabbi Yehuda, it can't be Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. And now we're going to tell you why it can't be any of them. And then we're going to tell you it actually can be any of them. That's a very Gemara-like structure. First to say it can't be any of these three because we have statements that contradict, statements in the name of Rabbi Meir, statements in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, a statement in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka that seem to contradict our Mishnah. And then we're going to go back and say, well, if you read the Mishnah a certain way, it actually can agree with Rabbi Meir, it can agree with Rabbi Yehuda, and it can agree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. So we're going to do a bit of an exercise in how we can reinterpret or read a Mishnah and various braitot and see if we can bring them together. In the course, we're going to do some interesting stuff. Okay, here we go. Everyone okay? Everyone with me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Netanya, mitzvah lazon et habanot kal v'choper lebanim da'aske b'torah divri Rabbi Meir. Now we have a braita, a Tanaitic source. My Mishnah is Tanaitic, my braita is Tanaitic, and here we have a statement in the name of Rabbi Meir. It is a mitzvah to feed the daughters, to sustain the daughters. A fortiori, kal v'chomer, the sons, because the sons are engaged in Torah study. Okay? So what we have is daughters, we have to support the daughters, and even more so the sons, because the sons have to learn Torah, and if the sons don't learn Torah, oy vavoy lanu, and if they're hungry, what's going to happen? They're going to go out begging, they're not going to learn Torah. Does anyone remember the age at which boys are supposed to start learning Torah? It's going to be the last decree in Usha, but you've learned it with me before. Some of you. Anyone remember the age they say is ideal to start teaching boys Torah? Yeah, anyone? Go ahead, Sandy, did you want to? Anyone?
6.
6, that's right, Marcia, right. You also got ahead in the Gemara. So 6. 6 years old, okay? So already we're going to see the Gemara already knows, and now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. The age that's up for discussion is children 6 and up. I'm going to explain why. Later on in Ketubot, on Samach Aleph, I think it is, Samach Aleph or Samach Bet, they talk about the obligation of women to breastfeed their children for the husband. Okay, right? And it's very bizarre because you're like, wait a minute, I thought you nursed for the child. We know that today we nurse to give those children immunity. It's good for the children. It nurtures the children. It's a mother-child bond. In the time of the Mishnah, you could have hired wet nurses. And the question is a woman obligated to nurse her own child? And the answer is she is, because it's
We lost you. It's not working.
A new learning experience for all of us.
We can't hear you.
Something happened here.
We
She
can't
left
hear
the
my,
meeting. She left the meeting. She'll be back. Maybe she hit the screen and something happened. Let's be patient. She'll be back. Technology is not perfect.
More likely it's the internet that's crashing.
She's trying. Okay, she says that she's joined the meeting. Let's see what happens.
I don't see her.
No, I don't
Nope.
either.
Yeah. Yeah, just hang on. She's trying to get back
I'm
on.
here, I'm here. Do you hear?
Good.
Yes. I don't
Okay.
know where I went. I no, were you all here and I didn't hear?
Yes, we were here. You weren't.
I was thrown, I didn't push a button. I'll just share a funny anecdote. I taught a Zoom class, and you can have breakout rooms. I don't know if you've used breakout rooms yet, where you can send
Not yet.
students to Bruta. It's very cool.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I was teaching 7 students, and I sent 3 of them to the breakout room, and I could see on the bottom of the screen that they were in the breakout room. And suddenly I pushed a button and they disappeared. The breakout room disappeared. And I felt a little bit like I had sent them into outer space, but I didn't know how to get them back. It was a very surreal moment. I'm like, where are they? I don't know how to
You
find
sent them
them.
into inner space. You sent them into
Inner space.
small
So I
and small.
texted, someone texted them. They were able to come back. And I'm like, were you in the breakout room the whole time? They were. Like, it's so bizarre. Like, I couldn't see them. They were in the breakout room. I lost control over the breakout room. I feel like we're in outer space and I'm going to eject someone into the galaxy. Anyway, yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened, but here I am. Okay. So
Wait,
I was.
we lost you when you said, now why 6? Starting to tell us why 6 years old was the age that.
Okay, so what I started to say is 6 years old, I'll make it a little shorter. Under the age of 6, children are considered to be under the eruv of their mother. In other words, if I create literally an eruv, and the father has an eruv and the mother has an eruv, and the father and mother cannot, let's say, get to one another on Shabbat, the child stays in his mother's eruv. It really is a catchphrase. He's under the protection of his mother. That a child, one of the Rishonim say, is under his mother's apron, right? Until the age of 6. There's a lack of independence of children until they're 6 that is symbolized by breastfeeding. In other words, this idea that a child has to be fed by his mother, literally by her, but then even, by her when she feeds him, they extend it until the age of 6. My feeling is for 2 reasons. It is known that there are women who nursed until 4 or 5 in the Gemara. Rabbi Meir knows there are women. 2 is average. Everyone nurses until 2. Every child needs to be nursed until 2. But 4 or 5 is not irregular. It's unusual, but not irregular. And 6 is the age of education. And so I feel very much that they managed to create this legal structure by linking the child to the mother. Since husbands have to support wives from the Torah, if we tuck the little children in under the mother, under the wife, we have a legal structure to support it. And as a result, until the age of 6, we can actually force fathers to support small children because those small children are a subcategory of wife, and wife is supported by husband. That's how that's from the learning I've done. That's how I see they managed legally to force fathers to support small children. Over the age of 6, when a child essentially has some independence and can be sent to school, let's say the age of education, he could in theory be sent out to beg. He could be theory and sent to the sweatshops and the workshops and the factories and the fields. And I can no longer legally protect the child by associating him with his mother. Okay, that's so when we're having this discussion, we're talking about children from the age of 6 to 12 and 12 and a half for girls, and 6 to 13 for boys, because they reach legally at 12 and 13, and then they can support themselves. In fact, at 12 and 13, if their grandfathers or their mothers want to give them a gift, then they will be able to access the gifts or the bed or whatever it is. Okay, so I'm just making some order. You're shaking your head, Donna, because you didn't hear me?
Yeah, you became unclear.
Okay.
Sometimes
It's garbled.
at some point,
so what I had
sometimes
last said was, at 12 and 13, a girl and a boy reaches legal majority and can even, if they have gifts, if they have a bank account, they can access any assets they may have been given. Under the age of 6, they are under the protection of their mother, who is wife, and so she is protected. That whole structure is legally protected. My challenge is 6 to 12 and 6 to 13, and we all understand, and the Gemara understands, those are still small children who are very vulnerable to exploitation, right? Oliver Twist. Charles Dickens was brilliant in portraying the plight of vulnerable children who are taken in by the Fagins of the world, put into terrible situations, to adults who manipulate and use and exploit children. And that's 6 to 12, 6 to 13 in the Gemara. Okay, that's what we're dealing with. We're now going to go back to the Gemara. I'm opening it up. So as we just said,
continue to use this.
yeah, what do you
Excuse
want
me,
to
Nechama, if we're going
want
to
to
continue to use a particular Gemara, wait a minute. If we're going to continue to use a particular Gemara, what I would suggest is that we, maybe you could email us the text.
Yes. I wasn't sure if that was comfortable for people that have email. Yes, then you could print it out. Or if you have the Gemara, you could open the Gemara. Yeah. So next week, we're going to continue with this for sure. So we're going to be in Ketubot from Daf 49 on in the Schottenstein. It's the second volume of Ketubot. But everything's Sfaria, everything's online. So and I'll send a file that Chaya can send out. Okay. So just to remind us, we have a shocking statement: fathers do not have to support their daughters. The Breita now basically says, wait a minute, it's a mitzvah. And even more so for the sons who have to learn Torah. Because if they're not being fed, they're not going to have the strength, the energy, or the mental capacity to learn Torah. Okay, that's Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir cannot be the author of our Mishnah. I'm just going to remind you. We said this Mishnah cannot be Rabbi Meir's, cannot be Rabbi Yehuda's, cannot be Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. And we're in the process of telling you why that is. Why it can't be Rabbi Meir. Because Rabbi Meir says there's a mitzvah. Rabbi Meir says there's a mitzvah to support the daughters, and even more so the son. So he certainly couldn't be the author of a statement that fathers do not have to support their daughters. Okay, number one. What about Rabbi Yehuda Omer? I'm over here. Rabbi Yehuda said, I tried to line up the people in English. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can annotate because it's just going to make it easier for you. Rabbi Yehuda said, here, I'm over here. Rabbi Yehuda said, and it's over here if you're trying to find it, this piece. Rabbi Yehuda said, it's a mitzvah to support the sons, kal v'chomer lebanot, mishum ziluta. Rabbi Yehuda is an author in the Breita, it's a mitzvah to support the sons, even more so the daughters, so they don't become prostitutes. They don't yiluta, that they don't have to prostitute themselves. So Rabbi Yehuda cannot be the author of the Mishnah, according to this Braita, because he basically says fathers have to support their daughters and their sons. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer, Chova lazon et habanot la'achar mitat avihen, abal b'chaye avihen elu ve'elu einan nizonim. Wait a minute. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says it's an obligation to sustain daughters after their father's death, but when their fathers are alive, both sons and daughters are not maintained. Our Mishnah only talks about daughters. Okay, so we've had a Braita that seems to suggest all three Tanaim are at odds with the Mishnah. Two of them require me to support daughters to someone and sons, and one of them says you don't have to support anyone. Okay, now we're moving on because the Gemara is now going to say, well, that's one way of reading it. We can also read it a different way. The Gemara is now going to restate the question. Mani matnite. You know what I'll do? I'll do it like this, and then you can see as I. Mani matnite. I Rabbi Meir. If the Mishnah was according to Rabbi Meir, ha'amar banim mitzvah. I Rabbi Yehuda, ha'amar banim nami mitzvah. I Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, afilu mitzvah nami leika. Okay, so it can't be any of them. Basically, the Gemara just did the work I did for you. Meaning, I did the work for you. If it's Rabbi Meir, he says boys are a mitzvah and girls are possibly an obligation. Rabbi Yehuda seems to say, providing for boys, there's a mitzvah, but there's no chova in either way. Rabbi Yehuda says providing for one's sons is also a mitzvah, not an obligation. Okay, so what we have is, again, Rabbi Meir addresses sons and daughters. Rabbi Yehuda addresses sons and daughters. He talks about mitzvah, not chova, but he certainly seems to think fathers are obligated to some capacity, but not chova. Okay, and Rabbi Yochanan doesn't think there's any mitzvah. None of the opinions fit the ruling of the Mishnah. Okay, Ibayid Ema. Now the Gemara is going to say, well, it could be any of them. It could be any of them. Now we're going to switch. We just said none of them fit with the Mishnah. The Mishnah says a father does not have to support his daughter, which suggests there's an obligation to support sons and maybe a mitzvah to support daughters. We now have two Tanaim who say it's a mitzvah to support sons and daughters, but not an obligation. And Rabbi Yochanan saying it's not a mitzvah or an obligation to support either. Okay. Ibayidema, if you will. Now I know I'm flipping it completely. As I said, I'm doing this piece because structurally it's really interesting. If you want, says the Gemara, Ema Rabbi Meir, Ibayid Ema Rabbi Yehuda, Ibayid Ema Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. So now the Gemara says, you know what? If I start from a different starting point, I can attribute it to any of these Tanaim, and I'm going to show you how. What I love about this is that interpretation can be flipped on its head. There's no one way to read the text. There are multiple ways. Even this one statement in the Mishnah can be interpreted by reading other Tanaitic statements, and I can't get to any sort of absolute certainty about what the Mishnah is stating regarding obligation and mitzvah, sons and daughters, because I have multiple texts that can either fit or contradict the Mishnah. That's really interesting in terms of an interpretive process. So now let's see. How did I get rid of the screen? Okay. All sorts of things are happening. Someone's scribbling on my screen.
Keep going.
Okay, hold on one second. Now I'm here. Okay, I made it yellow. That I can do.
Well, I can't see the text.
You can't
There you
see
go.
text?
No, I don't see you or the text.
Okay, literally someone's writing on my screen. Who's doing that?
Happening.
Okay, that's not funny. How's that happening? Someone's writing on my screen.
I don't know. I'm not touching the screen. Something's going on.
Okay, this is like really, really weird. Hopefully they won't get to the Gemara. So can you see this, Donna? Ibayidema?
No, I just see black.
So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop sharing. Hold on one second. I'm going to stop sharing. And now I'm going to go back and reshare. and see if that solves the problem. Okay.
Okay.
And next week, I will send you all the source sheet, and then we won't have to have this problem. When I taught Daf Yomi today, everyone had their own Gemara. Is this good?
No.
Can you see now?
Good.
Now I see it. Yes. Now I see
Okay.
it.
Ah, and now I found my annotating. Okay, so this is where I am. This is me writing. I'm here. Okay. You saw that? I drew a circle.
Yes. Yeah.
Ibayit Ema Rabbi Meir, V'hachi Ka'amar. Now, if you wish, I want to give you the English also if I can. If you wish, say it's Rabbi Meir, V'hachi Ka'amar. If you wish, we can read the Mishnah according to Rabbi Meir, who was the one who said it's a mitzvah to support the daughters, Kal V'chomer, the sons, because of Torah. How am I going to read that? Rabbi Meir, V'hachi Ka'amar, Ha'av Eino Chayav Bimzonot Bito, V'hu Adin Libno. Ha-mitzvah bibito ika, kal v'chomer lebanim, v'adiktani bito ha-kamash malan. I'm now going to explain it. So this is how I'm going to read the Rabbi Meir's statement. A father is not obligated to support his daughter. And it's the same law for sons. This is how I'm reading Rabbi Meir. This is not what Rabbi Meir said. This is how I'm interpreting Rabbi Meir. When Rabbi Meir said it's a mitzvah to support the daughters, kal v'chomer, the sons, because of Torah, he's basically saying a father has no obligation to support his daughters, and it's the same law for sons. Rabbi Meir would not distinguish between sons and daughters. Ha-mitzvah v'bito ika, there's a mitzvah, though, to support daughters, even more so sons because of Torah. And the reason that hold on, I have to get out of this. The reason that the Gemara brings, the Mishnah brings, ha-kamash malan, why does the Mishnah bring me daughters? Why is that the test case as opposed to daughters and sons? Oh, now I have to figure out how to get rid of this stupid.
I will. I'll play it back, okay?
We'll get there.
Somebody's phone is ringing.
So according to Rabbi Meir, even with regard to his daughter, there's clearly no obligation, but there's a mitzvah. So now let me explain. I'm now going to make this clear. The Mishnah says there's no obligation to support daughters. Rabbi Meir in the Breita says there's a mitzvah, even more so sons, because they learn Torah. Why does the Gemara, thank you, whoever brought that to me, thank you. I have a mysterious benefactor out there, okay, get rid of that. So now I'm going to keep this on the board. Now I'm over here. So here, draw. Now I'm over here. No. Erase. Okay, I'm not going to play with this now because we don't have a lot of time left. The Gemara says as follows, but wait a minute. Why does the Mishnah only bring me daughters according to our reading of Rabbi Meir? Because daughters, definitely there's no obligation. I'm really worried about the sons learning Torah. So the reason I bring daughters is to tell you, even though there's obviously no obligation for daughters, I use the daughter to tell you there's a mitzvah, right? Sons, clearly there's a mitzvah. Kal v'chomer banim da'aske b'Torah, right? Clearly there's a mitzvah to support sons. You might have thought that there's not even a mitzvah to support daughters. So the language of the Mishnah, according to this interpretation, is that there's no chovah, but we highlight the daughter because there is a mitzvah and that's not obvious. Okay, so that is how I'm going to read Rabbi Meir. Next, v'ibayid ema. Now I've got myself into some sort of, I'm going to erase this. V'ibayid ema. Rabbi Yehuda v'hachik tamar. What about Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda was the one, does everyone remember? He's worried about ziluta. He's worried my daughters are going to become promiscuous or prostitute themselves. So for him, the kal v'chomer starts with sons and kal v'chomer daughters. V'ibayid ema Rabbi Yehuda v'hachik tamar. Ha'av eino chayav b'mzono bito v'kol sheken lebno. A father doesn't have to support daughters, and even more so sons, because Rabbi Yehuda is more concerned for the daughters. I don't have any obligation to support sons or daughters. Ha-mitzvah b'beno ika, but there's a mitzvah to support sons. Kal v'chomer lebanot, even more so daughters. V'hu diktani bito, v'ha kamash malan da'afilu bito chova leka. So why, when I read the Mishnah, can I fit this with Rabbi Yehuda? Why only state daughters? because Rabbi Yehuda would really love it if I could obligate daughters in a legal obligation on fathers. But even there, what can I do? There's no legal obligation. So Rabbi Meir is concerned with the sons. The reason, according to that reading, the Mishnah starts with daughters or only mentions daughters is to tell you, okay, there's no obligation, but do a mitzvah. For God's sake, support your daughters. Obviously, you're going to support your sons so they can learn Torah. It's a mitzvah. Rabbi Yehuda, my reading of Rabbi Yehuda says, why isn't there an obligation? What can I do? There's no obligation, but there's a mitzvah, central mitzvah to support daughters so that they don't become prostitutes. And so that's obvious, but unfortunately there's not an obligation, and Rabbi Yehuda states it that way, so you know there's no obligation. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, now I'm up to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. What are we going to do with him? Remember, he says there's no mitzvah whatsoever to support sons or daughters until the father dies. Sons and daughters are the same, no obligation. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there's not even a mitzvah. Why, according to Rabbi Yochanan, would he only mention the obligation not to support daughters? Because after the father dies, there is an obligation. So you might get confused. You might think the obligation starts when the father is alive. That's why the Mishnah has to highlight the daughter, because there's no obligation, even though after death there's an obligation. Okay, so now I'm going to summarize. Now we're moving on to the decrees of Busha. It'll get easier. So what I want to do is give you a summary of what we've just done. We started off with the Mishnah. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. We started off with a Mishnah in which a father is not obligated to support his daughters legally. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah reminds me, except when he dies. When he dies, there's an obligation, just like there's an obligation of inheritance. The Gemara then begins to say, wait a minute, who could have authored this Mishnah? Who could have made this statement? And it brings me three different Tanaim. Rabbi Meir seems to be aware that there's no obligation, but mitzvah. Rabbi Yehuda also, no obligation, mitzvah. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, not even a mitzvah. Not when the father's alive. Now, I'll remind you, fathers do not, first of all, I appreciate everyone puts the sons and daughters together. Not one Tana suggests that a father would have to support his sons to the exclusion of his daughters. What we're talking about here is children. Children do not have to be supported by their fathers. This ties into what we know of Roman law at the time. Pater familias. A father does not have to support his children according to Roman law. And I really wonder, for 2,000 years, they are not able to change the law, the halakha, until we get to the mid-20th century. Only then it changes. And to me, I don't know why that is, why they aren't able to enact one of their rabbinic laws to the point that fathers would be forced. You could go into their estate, you can take their money and support the children. That's what we would do today by court ruling. They do not do it for 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years. I don't know if that's because Dina de Malchuta Dina, the laws of the land are so strong that basically a father will go to the Roman court, the Greek court, the Babylonian court, the Islamic court, whatever the courts are, and say, hey, I'm going to get a ruling from the secular court, and that's going to overturn the rabbinic court. I don't know. I will say that, as we'll see, the Rambam, the Tur, the Shulchan Aruch are going to essentially say we cannot legally force fathers to support their sons and daughters once they hit 6 years old. We should try other methods, and we'll support them from charity. In the 1950s, the rabbinic court is going to say we can force them. Okay, so I'm just giving you a bit of a historical overview. That is the law in all countries until the 20th century. Fathers cannot be forced to support their children. So what I find interesting is that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda go to the language of mitzvah, and with mitzvah maybe they're reminding fathers that that is what they should be doing. They should be, it's a mitzvah. Remember the Torah. Remember our religious values, people, and our, our fidelity to God and His Word and what the Torah stands for. Hold on, I'm going into another room. I'm going. My husband and daughter no longer want to be sequestered in the bedroom. Okay, so I moved in here. So remember that, and so Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir basically say it's a mitzvah, and each of them have a different concern. Rabbi Meir is concerned, and I love his concern. You can't be educated unless you eat. If we talk about the Corona crisis, there are children who will not have breakfasts and lunches because they ate only in school. I mean, all of the municipalities in Israel and in New York City, I'm following a little bit what's going on there, are going to be bringing food to children on the free lunch programs. And Israel said, Mayor Panim said it would do the same thing. So this awareness that children will not be able to learn, to study, to function if they're hungry. That's Rabbi Meir's concern. It's a mitzvah. It's not a legal obligation, but Dad, listen up. We want our children to learn Torah. That's an obligation. Fathers are obligated to teach their children Torah, or sons, boys, right, at this point. Sons Torah. So that's where your obligation is. So you better feed your son so he can fulfill your obligation. Rabbi Yehuda says, you know what, learning Torah is nice, but I'm more concerned with sexual morality. And I know if daughters aren't fed, they're going to be exploited and vulnerable, and they may have to, little girls will have to sell themselves to buy bread. That's unthinkable. I can't legally force a father to support his children, but boy, is it a mitzvah. And then Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, the third boy, says, look, buddies, guys, if there's no legal obligation, there's no mitzvah. You can't separate the two. Or there's a legal obligation, and that's the mitzvah. Or there's no legal obligation, no mitzvah. And only after death is there an obligation. Okay? Everyone okay? I'm going to move on to the first takana of Pusha. That's what we're going to do, and then we'll finish up. Because that will show us how does a community function.
Nechama,
Yeah.
there's one of the participants is making noise.
Jerry is blocking.
Oh, so I'm going to
picture.
mute him. I'm going to mute him.
He's got to be muted also.
Okay, fine. I'll do that. I can do that. Okay.
He's been interrupting the picture for about 3 minutes.
Hold on. I should be able to do this.
No, it's new for everybody.
Hold on one second. I have to figure out how to do this.
This is because we see.
Hold on 1 second. Participants. I have the participants. Let's see if I can. So, select a microphone. It's supposed to be so easy. Hold on. Because I don't think I'm the host. Okay, hold on. I'm going to take care of that. Hold on 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll see if that. See if he can. See if he can get that. Okay.
Nechama, I can't see you.
Oh, you can't see me now? Hold on.
No.
Okay. You can't see me?
We're seeing
No.
Jerry Barash.
We're getting Jerry Barash is now we're on Donna's iPad. Okay,
Right.
we'll look at Donna.
Hold on. Oh, hold on. I see that my Town office is trying to help out here because they're hosting. You still can't see me? Let me see if I shut off my video. No?
You're going in and out. You're going in and out with Jerry. Jerry's
נחמה,
blank.
נחמה זאת אביגיל,
כן.
אתם צריכות עזרה במשהו?
כן. הם לא רואות אותי, הם אומרים, ואני רואה עכשיו לדוגמה דברה, לי לפחות, היא מסך ירוקה, כנראה יש משהו שעובר בין המסכים ומסתירים אחד את הנוכחות, ואז, do you see me as green? You saw me, like I see Debbie black.
אני רואה רק את דברה בירוק, אבל את כולם אני רואה כמו שצריך, גם אותך אני רואה כמו שצריך, אז אולי זה כל אחת עם המחשב שלה באיזושהי בעיה.
No. Jerry keeps popping up with a black screen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
Jeremy is back, but
That's
so
because they're not muting their microphones. There's a way the host can mute everybody and then
Yeah.
just unmute the people that raise their hands. And that's really what we should do because we're
Yeah,
seeing.
that's what we should do. So Abigail, at host, are you the host?
שאלה, ממש שאלה. להשתיק את כולם פשוט?
להשתיק את
לא,
כולם, ואז כשמרימים יד, אפשר. Next week I
אז
have
מה שאתם יכולים לעשות זה כל אחת שתשתיק את עצמה, אפשר לעשות מיוט.
בסדר.
בצד שמאל למטה תעשו מיוט.
Yeah, but they're not doing it. There's still a lot of people
Okay,
that
so
aren't
let me
muting.
just
I
say to
see
everyone,
them.
in the top right, there's a button that says mute. On the top right of your screen, just move your mouse to the top right, and then you can push mute, which is on the top right. It comes up in a little blue box, and so please mute yourselves if you're not muted, and that way background noise won't bother people. Next week, I'm really going to try, because I have several Zoom accounts, I just could not figure out how to open this for Matan when I have a different Zoom account for Nachshon. Anyway, next week, a lot of these problems will be solved. I'll have all week to work on it. You're next Thursday. By next Thursday, I'm going to be really good at this. Okay, what I want to do is, can you see me though? Can people see me?
No, I can't see you.
I can see you.
I can see
I
you.
see Donna now. Now I see Ann. Black screen.
Yeah, I feel like people are going, hold on, maybe there's a,
אני
When you
בודקת את זה, אני
speak, you
מתקשרת
see the
לאסתי, אני
person
בודקת
who's
את זה.
speaking. You see the person who's speaking. So if you stop making noise,
okay, so if I
then
speak,
you'll see
you'll be
the
able to see me.
teacher.
Okay,
Exactly.
so I'm going to speak. I want to just do the first passage in Usha, and then I think we'll stop we'll be done. But you can hear me, so I'll be the invisible teacher. Okay, this next passage is very interesting because we basically just affirmed, like I said, we have basically concluded I cannot force fathers to support their children. There's nothing over the age of 6, nothing I can do legally, which is very painful. And it's going to be very painful in this next passage. Amar Rabbi Ilah, Amar Reish Lakish, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Bar Hanina Ba'usha. Ba'usha Itkino, I'm sorry. Usha is one of the places that the Sanhedrin went between the destruction of the first temple and the second temple, I'm sorry, destruction of the second temple until 200 CE. The Sanhedrin, which is really the rabbinic court, moved from place to place. One of the places they get to, of course, is Yavne, Tiberia, Hori. They get to Usha in the 1st century. And there are 6 decrees that are made in Usha. All of them affect the social fabric of the community. And what I'm going to say is a takana, we tend to say, oh, there's a takana. Well, that everyone has to keep to that. But the question of when does a takana become halacha? When does it become law is what we're addressing here. Do all takanas become law? So this is in Usha. Sheyehe Adam zan efanav ve'epanotav kshehem ktanim. The takana in Usha makes so much sense. A man must support his children, sons and daughters when they're little. Okay, that's the takana in Usha. Enough of this fluffing around. Mitzvah, chovah, forget all that. A father must support his children when they're small. Otherwise, as I said, it falls on the community. Ibayalahu. So they asked, a question was then asked, Hilchata kavate o ein hilchata kavate. Don't tell me takana, says the Gemara. What's the halacha? Can I go in court order and take the man's assets and feed his children? Because I can do that with the wife and her ketubah. The ketubah, I can cash in, whether he wants me to or not. I can literally go and sell his fields, take his assets, and give her the money for the ketubah. I can feed his wife aggressively by court order. Hilchata kavate o hilchata kavate. Don't fool around with me. Don't tell me there's a takana in Usha. Does it help or doesn't it help? Now we're going to see 3 stories. Tashma. Ki hava'atu l'kamei de Rav Yehuda. Amar lahu. Ya'arod yalda va'abnei mata shadya. They came to Rabbi Yehuda to complain about a father who was not supporting his children. He does not say to them, okay, guys, let's go sell an apple field, an apple tree, and feed the kids. he says, wow, that really sucks. A jackal bears offspring and casts them out for the residents of the community to support. Question or not, and sends them out to be supported by the community. In other words, what does Rav Yehuda say to the community who comes to complain? There's nothing I can do. He's a despicable human being. He bore offspring like an animal and then abandoned them. So I am not getting from Rav Yehuda the strong arm of the law. That's what I thought I would get. Rav Yehuda would say, okay, let's go do something at Takana and Usha. So Usha tries to make a Takana. It does not become law. And as a result, Rav Yehuda, in frustration, says, what am I supposed to do with this despicable human being if I don't have the strong arm of the law? Now let's see the next story. Ki hava'atu l'kamei to Rav Chisda, they came before Rav Chisda. Amar lahu, he said to them. What does he say to them? He doesn't say to them, let's go to the bank and put a stop on his bank account. Kfule asita bitsuvra v'leikum v'leima or v'bai bane v'ahu gavra lo bai bane. He basically says, go into the public. Those who are from England, think Hyde Park. Turn over a stool, a mortar, a pot, stand on it, and thunder out, this man, a raven cares for his sons, yet this man does not support his sons. Humiliate him. Publicly humiliate him. You have my permission. Go into Hyde Park. Go into a most public space, the marketplace. Stand on a pot and tell everyone, ravens, and ravens are ugly birds, right? So the ugliest of birds. A raven is also considered to be a cruel bird, right? So even the raven support his children. And this father won't support his children. So what I have here, despite the takana, I do not see it turned into law. I have to say again, as someone who learns Gemara and Halacha, there are instances where takana becomes halacha. This never becomes halacha until the 1950s. And all I can think of is, again, because they know that they're not going to have any backing outside of the rabbinic court, and people, I guess, will be able to ignore it. I don't know. I'm going to skip down to the last incident of Rava. Ki havu ate l'kamei de Rava. We have Rav Yehuda, we have Rav Chisda, and now if another situation comes to Rava, and he does not say, again, Rava. So I'm going from the second generation Amoraim to the third generation, now the fourth generation. In every generation, there are fathers who don't support their children. It's going to come before the community. What are we going to do? What tools do we have? Rava basically says, is it nice for you that we have to support your children through charity, that the community is being depleted because you won't support your children? So in all three cases, the only mechanisms we have, and I do want to say they're not simple. They can work, but not always. Go shame him. Go publicly humiliate him. Don't give him service. As a community, you can protest. But as a law, as a legal structure, as the force of the law, I can't enact that. So again, this is, you know, where I started by saying social justice. I'll just read the last piece. V'lo amaran ela delo amid. Now this becomes interesting. We only say this for men who are not very wealthy, middle class, right? We can't force them. But if they're very wealthy, we can force very rich man to give tzedakah. We can force very wealthy people to give tzedakah. Apparently Rava, the same Rava, who cannot force a father to support his children, he could only humiliate him, was able to force Rabbi Natan Bar Ami, Rav Natan. Notice he's even a Rav. He wasn't giving tzedakah. He was able to force him to give 400 dinar, an enormous amount, zuz, for tzedakah, because he was so wealthy. So a court can force someone to give charity. A court cannot force someone to give food to their children. Again, notice the tension. I can then take that 400 zuz and support his children. That I can do. But I can't force anyone to give charity. What I'm left with is the social responsibility of the community to essentially say, ad kan, we're not willing to put up with it. It's a little bit like what we do with igun, right? When someone doesn't give a get, we say to the community, look, we can't do anything. but go humiliate him, excommunicate him, put pressure on him. You as the community can try so that we as the court can then do our job. So it's shocking because again, how in our world of Torah, how can we not find a pasuk? But there isn't any. In Mishpatim, in Kitetse, in Mishpatim, Shoftim, Kitetse, where I see all of the social laws governing social interaction and justice. I don't have anything that speaks of fathers' obligation to support their children. They do not create a precedent, even though, of course, I think they could have. And I think it has something to do with the law of the land throughout the centuries, millennia, until we get to today. So I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to say that that I think, just maybe a few words, that I think there's a lot of power to the community. That when the rabbis lift up their hands in frustration, despair, the tools they normally use, they're unable to use in order to achieve justice or safety, then that falls on the community, and the community does have a lot of power. I will say we're reading Vayakel Pikude. I have an article in the Jerusalem Post. I decided not to go to Corona. I talked about the mirrors and the mirrors that were donated by the women. I think this is definitely a time we can all look deeply inside ourselves and try to find the strength and the resources to try to give to one another, try to give to the community, even in our isolation, remember one another. And on that note, really, may it be a wonderful Shabbat. May Shabbat bring some sort of respite from this difficult reality. And let's keep learning and connecting through Torah. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you all for
רגע, רק אני רוצה להגיד משהו. הלינק הזה שקיבלתם זה לינק קבוע. אנחנו לא יודעים, זה אותו לינק לשבוע הבא, ואנחנו לא יודעים מה יהיה אחרי פסח. אם אחרי פסח אנחנו באותה בעיה, אז להיכנס באותו לינק, שתדעו, בסדר? תודה רבה לכולם. ובשורות טובות.